Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again. And if you're like me, you have been playing the coil activity and just watched random teammates burn through all your revives, or you've been in Gambit, your teammate has 14 modes, going for that 15 and they die and you are immensely frustrated. But if you want to be a good support teammate Titan like me, I've got the build for you. It all starts with the Precious Scars exotic Titan helmet, and this recently got a buff. The armor perk says final blows from weapons with the damage type matching your subclass energy create a burst of healing around you that grants allies restoration. After reviving or being revived, you gain an aura that provides overshields to you and nearby allies. So if you have to revive them often, you will be getting that overshield. But if you just want to keep them alive, you can grant them restoration pretty consistently, especially if you use a Stasis subclass with the Aegir Scepter. This thing absolutely slaps. I think it's underrated in a lot of different ways. It has the intrinsic trait Aegir's Call, final blows. With this weapon, generate a slowing burst around the defeated target. So essentially, you're healing your allies, you're slowing the enemies, keeping them alive pretty much all the time. It's got Riga's Refrain. Stasis final blows transfer ammo to this weapon's magazine from reserves, which is very nice. And then also the Catalyst. If you long press the reload button, drain super energy, overflowing the magazine and empowering the beam with bonus damage and the ability to slow and freeze targets until the magazine or super energy runs out or the weapon is stowed. This can only be used if the super is fully charged. Now, a lot of people don't like to use this, but I think with the Stasis subclass, I don't really mind missing out on my super, especially with the increased damage that you'll see from Aegir's Scepter, especially on like mini bosses and even bosses. It can be very, very effective. I'm also rocking Epical Integration. This is very nice if with Incandescent. If you want to add clear with it, you get a kill with Aegir's and then swap over to Epical to clear a bunch of ads, and then you can swap back and forth, especially with this season's artifact perks. It works out really, really nicely. You could technically swap a Penance for Aegir's Scepter and then go with the Sunshot instead, but I like this combination better personally. It's just an option if you don't want to burn through your super. Now, as far as the heavy, I am using Bump in the Night. You can use any solar or stasis rocket here, but that's what I prefer just because of the artifact perks this season, like Argent Ordnance. I also rock Hail the Storm, Pillar of Ice, as well as Flint Striker and Kindling Trigger. Remember, you can become radiant without necessarily needing to be on a solar subclass, which is awesome. You can also use Blast Radius, which also helps out. So these are the artifact perks that I would have recommended the most. And then Torch is actually very nice for this combination. While radiant, deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by strand and stasis debuffs. So again, if you're swapping back and forth between Aegir's and Epical, you will become radiant consistently while also using Aegir's to slow enemies, getting the additional damage for that debuff. It works out very, very nicely, including against bosses. So as far as my mods go, I am running Power Preservation, Heavy Ammo Finder, Stasis Siphon, Fastball, Heavy-Handed Firepower, Melee damage and arc damage resist, Stasis reserves. Then we've got Invigoration and double Stasis weapon surge, and finally Distribution, Outreach, and Time Dilation. So as far as how this build works, I also have the subclass with pretty standard stuff: Behemoth with Rally Barricade, High Lift, Shiver Strike, and then I'm using the Dust Field for this. Then Tectonic Harvest and Diamond Lance. Diamond Lance isn't really necessary, but I don't really like the other two aspects for this build, so that's why I have it on. But Tectonic Harvest is huge, especially when you're gathering those Stasis shards to get the overshield with the Whisper of Rhyme. You also are going to rock Durance, Refraction, Conduction, and then finally Change as the rest of your fragments. The playstyle for this is pretty simple. Get a kill with Aegir's, then swap to your Epical, get a couple kills with that, swap back and forth as needed in order to stay radiant and also slow enemies down. Once your super is ready, that's when you are going to supercharge your Aegir's and do as much damage as possible, especially against bosses. But you can also use your Bump in the Night or heavy weapon in order to melt bosses as well. The damage here is not going to be the most insane, depending on if you're just strictly doing DPS. But for your normal activities, especially for Gambit and the coil activity, this is tremendous. It helps allies stay alive, especially if they're running a DPS build that's lacking in survivability, which seems to happen very often. You can run a Void Titan with the Overshield, but I found that allies tend to run off on their own and not be close enough for you to just drop your shield by them, for them to consistently have that overshield. So that's why I like to run alongside them with my Aegir Scepter and continuously generate that restoration for them so they stay alive without even knowing how they're doing it. It is very effective in my personal opinion. I have much better luck when I use something like this with random teammates who tend to be struggling with the activity, and that's going to happen. I know personally that this game has varying levels of difficulty depending on the player, and so you want to make sure you are a good teammate if at all possible. From my personal experience, I think being a good teammate will make a lot of the random matchmaking activities significantly easier, whereas if you are going off and doing your own thing, it might be more of your playstyle, which is fine, but it's just not going to be necessarily as effective as a cohesive team. And I do like playing support from time to time. It's much easier often with the warlock class, but I do like playing it on my Titan as well, and I feel like this comes in handy quite a bit. Is underrated for damage, is underrated for ad clear. This does a bit of everything very well. Nice survivability. You get overshields with stasis, you get the restoration, you get radiant, all that kind of good stuff combines to really be super effective in my personal opinion. So that's why I like this build. I really want to try more builds with precious scars, to be honest. I feel like it is a more effective exotic armor than people know at this point, so I'm definitely going to be testing it out with other subclasses. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I hope you want to see more Destiny 2 build content from me going forward. That's what I'm having the most fun with, so that's what I'm probably going to do, at least leading up to the content that we're getting between now and the final shape. So again, I'm really looking to test out different builds. So if you have some different options that you want me to try out, some either exotic weapons, exotic armors, some niche combinations that you think are underrated, more effective than people realize, any of that good stuff, let me know in the comments down below. I would really appreciate it. But if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Destiny 2 content. Have a good one. My name is Jopa, and I'll catch you all later.